Hello, Realtors. Welcome to the Legal Podcast. I'm Byron King, General Counsel here. You'd like to say hello and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Tiara Pitts, your Director of Fair Housing.
And Mike's producing, Sharon's marketing. Today we have a special guest star, Meredith Buttler. She's the Real Estate Commissioner Administrator. Meredith, would you like to introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Meredith Buttler. I'm the Administrator for the Real Estate Commission. I've been with the Department of Labor Licensing and Regulations since 2016 and have had the amazing benefit of working with 13 different licensing boards and very excited to be working with the Real Estate Commission. So.
Thanks for coming over today.
Yeah.
Our first question comes from our new political director, Louis Del Toro. He's asking, what's making your phone ring these days over at the Real Estate Commission?
We are in full swing with renewals, so it is 9 times out of 10 renewal-related questions. If there's background check requirements, how to get into the renewal system, how long do they have, if they're inactive, how to reactivate, just a slew of questions surrounding renewals.
And then if I'm renewing this year, what's my deadline for renewal?
Hard deadline of June 30th. All renewals need to be submitted by midnight of June 30th. They need to be complete, which means completing the online form plus payment. After that, July 1st, per the statutes, the licenses will all be lapsed, and there's a 6-month reinstatement period until December 31st. Following December 31st, licenses get canceled, which means if you haven't renewed, if you haven't reinstated, you're going to have to start all over again.
Right. And then I probably don't want to wait till last minute, right? I
Yeah.
want to, because it's the internet, things can go wrong.
Correct.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Lewis also wanted to ask, what are some recent highlight issues or disciplinary issues you're seeing at the Real Estate Commission?
So over the past couple years or so, the kind of top trending issues that we're seeing is supervision, improper discharge of agent duties, as well as mismanagement of trust funds, commingling, things like that. So those are kind of the top 3 that we're seeing on rising. Advertising, that's always a big one. That's kind of standard, but those 3 are the ones that are trending right now.
And commingling, anything with a trust account, you can lose your license for that, right? The Real
Yes.
Estate Commissioners take that pretty seriously.
Very seriously. Same thing with supervision, because we are seeing such a rise with mismanagement of associate licensees. They're really taking a strong look at that.
So with the renewal, since it is renewal time and we have the fingerprints, what is any advice that you can give about going through that fingerprint process?
So for this renewal cycle, no fingerprints are required, which is nice.
Wonderful.
The next time it will be required for renewals will be 2027 and 2028. So we'll start probably in January of 2027, getting information out, educating licensees how to get those fingerprints done, and really kind of hammering it home before renewals even open. So don't worry about background checks this renewal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know our members like to hear that.
Yes.
So that was a good question. What are some topics on your radar on the horizon that some of your priorities as the administrator?
Priorities administrator, I really am always about efficiency and effectiveness. I want to licensing should not be the hardest part of the job of a realtor. It really shouldn't. It should be easy. So one of the things I'm wanting to do is enhance communication, just really streamline processes. We're developing the licensee portal, so that way, instead of going to the commission website and finding, whatever document you need out of the hundreds that we had on there, we're trying to put everything on that licensee portal so it's a one-stop shop. That's big for me, because when it's efficient and effective for the licensee, it makes it for a lot easier communications on the things that, when we do have issues. So just really trying to amp up that communication and ease for the licensee.
Fantastic. And then last one from Lewis was any opportunities for realtors that want to get involved in the Real Estate Commission?
Yes, we have a lot going on. The Commission actually has currently 4 task forces going on, had 4 task forces. One is finance. We have right now about a $7 million budget, and so the Commission really wanted to look at how can we use those funds to assist licensees, enhance education, all of that. So that task force met. That has been concluded, but we still have 3 active task force. We have one on wholesaling. We have one on education. That's a large one, and that's going to be ongoing. And then we have another on inspections. So if anybody wants to get involved, please, by all means, email me, email the Commission. Happy to have you guys, anyone join these task force. So.
Fantastic. Terry, you have another, that was all Lewis's. Do you have one?
What if a person was interested in being an actual commissioner? How would that process go?
So for the actual commissioners, the way that the commission is set up is there's one commissioner that represents each of the 7 congressional districts, and then we have one at large. So if they are interested in serving, they'll need to look at what congressional district they're actually in, contact the association, the Realtor Association that's there. There's a special process to which the commission office is not involved. To get their name submitted to the governor's office, there's a special, I believe it's the Senate review that has to approve. So that's the pathway, but getting in touch with the local associations, the key for that if they're interested.
Okay.
Super. And Chris Owens, who answers the phones for the hotline and for SCR, was asking, what's kind of, because she gets a lot of these calls where they confuse LLR and SCR, what's kind of the difference between LLR and SCR from your point of view?
Well, LLR, the big difference being if you're going to practice real estate, you have to have a license from us. SCR being the association, obviously, that's an optional membership that you can engage in. But if you're going to practice real estate, you have to be licensed with the commission. And the commission, basically, we are there to protect the public, and by ensuring that licensees, those individuals who practice real estate in this in wonderful great state, actually do meet the qualifications in order to do that. So we're kind of, I guess, the gatekeepers, and then you guys add a wonderful enhancement for the realtors and members. So.
Super. Yeah, and when they're a member, they have access to things like our tech hotline
Yes.
and our legal hotline, which, by the way, is 803-712-3478. Austin Smallwood's on the hotline, Tiara Pitts on the hotline, me, Byron King, we're on the hotline. We can answer your questions. And we also handle kind of realtor court, where we have ethics, code of ethics, and commission disputes, arbitration over commission disputes. One of the questions I had during license renewal, what happens if somebody, especially a broker in charge, doesn't renew? What bad things can happen?
Unfortunately, if a broker in charge does not renew, and their license does go into lapse status, we actually have to close that office or that firm's registration. And when that happens, any associate licensees, brokers, salesperson licensee holders, because they are not under the proper supervision, they actually go on inactive status. So if a broker doesn't renew, that no one in that firm can then continue to practice.
Yikes.
So if I'm an agent, could I have my license at 2 different brokerages to make sure?
No, per statute it is one. You are under one broker in charge under one brokerage.
Okay.
And then I know this is something that's important to you as an administrator. What would you say to licensees about keeping their phone numbers and their email addresses up to date with LLR?
That is a big one. It is actually required by law that you keep us updated with your contact information. That's phone, address, and email. Email becoming super important. That's how you get into the licensee portal. That's how we've been communicating more and more. So by law, they're required to. But it is a very big one to definitely keep us in the loop.
So if you have to send like an alert or something like that, a reminder, it's going out on email a lot of times. So if they have the wrong email, they're not getting the information. Right?
Correct. They're not getting that communication. They're not getting the reminders about renewals. They're missing a lot of pertinent information. So.
And then talking about forgetting to do stuff. What if I go in there and I've forgotten my login and I'm trying to renew my license? What do you tell folks?
Well, the easiest possible way is on that login screen, there's actually a link. It says, I forgot my password. You can click that. And it'll send a prompt to the email address we have on file. Once again, very important that you give us the correct email, because if you don't, then you're not going to get that password reset. There's also another button if you've forgotten your username. A lot of people don't remember that. That's also there. Once again, critical that if you don't have the correct email, you're not going to get that information. If all else fails, you can always email into the commission. We're happy to help. We're happy to send reset passwords from our end. You're welcome to call, but it's usually the quickest, easiest way is just to do that online. So.
And that's a good reason not to wait last minute, right? Because what's your business hours for you and your staff?
My team and I, we are 8:30 to 5. So if you wait to the amen moment for renewals and you get kicked out or you can't log in that June 29th or June 30th at 8 a.m., we're not going to be there to assist. It's going to kick you out. You're going to be frozen, and then you're going to end up having to reinstate. So,
Terry, you have some more questions on that?
Yeah, so we do ethics hearings here, and I recently got certified as a administrator to be able to, handle those hearings. I know you guys do hearings as well. What are some of the different type of complaints that a member of the public could file if they feel, something went wrong in a transaction? What are the complaints that your office could handle?
Members of the public are always welcome to file complaints. The biggest thing to note is that for us to be able to take action, to be able to pursue the complaint, it needs to be against an actual licensee. And the reason being is we do not license the firms. We have them register so that we can track if there's proper supervision being done, but we don't license them. So we can only take action and discipline against an actual licensee. Regarding the type, I've had everything from not handling trust funds correctly to they just suspect that something wasn't quite adding up or correct. Members of the public are always welcome to submit complaints. The commission will review the complaints, and the only ones that we can take action on are those that we have jurisdiction by the statutes. If it's, they say, oh, well, I want to file a complaint because the front office staff was rude. That's not within our jurisdiction. We wouldn't be able to follow up on that complaint. But if they're filing a complaint that disclosures weren't conducted or that trust funds were mishandled, those are the types of things we can do investigations and take action on.
So what if they are seeking monetary damages and they're saying the property disclosure wasn't right, now I have to replace something that's going to cost me money? Would that be something they could handle through your process? So
great question. So as far as requesting reimbursement to those sellers or buyers, the commission doesn't have the authority to do that. That is a civil small claims court issue. What we can do is investigate the matter, and if we do find wrongdoing by the licensee, we can take discipline action against that licensee's license. But we can't order them to repay monies or anything like that. That's a civil claims matter. Yeah, that's the same with our process as well. So when people call, we often need to get to the bottom of what they're seeking. And sometimes they're seeking to have the person's license taken away, which we also don't have the authority to do. And that's when we refer them to your office. Yep.
Yeah, and then so as you guys, you and your staff work for the state government, labor license regulation, and then South Carolina Real Estate Commission. And inside with the employees, state government employees, what's the difference between an inspector and an investigator?
So the commission is given by statutes the ability to go in and inspect firms, inspect property management offices, and what they're looking for is there's actually in the statutes listing, they're looking at records. Are these offices, are these licensees handling trust funds correctly? Are the records as required in statutes correct? So they're investigating basically the workings of the office and making sure that the broker in charge is doing their due diligence of, supervising, making sure that you don't have licensees or unlicensed individuals doing things that they shouldn't be doing. So our inspections is kind of the proactive, making certain that we identify the issues and address them before they become a problem and come to the commission. Investigators, those come into play once a complaint has been made, and it's one of those complaints where upon review we do have jurisdiction in the matter and we can go out and do an investigation and create a case that is then presented to the commission.
Super. And then mention the trust account being important. I was on the state government website, the LLR Real Estate Commission, and so the Real Estate Commission provides a real estate trust guideline, so any broker or property manager in charge should basically know this inside and out from inspection. Super.
Yes, I think I've heard one of our commissioners mention or recommend that they print that out and they put it in with their office manual, just to have it there on site if there's questions. It's a great resource.
Fantastic. Yeah. And then, so Tiara was talking about the complaints. What's kind of the process? So say Tiara's a member of the public and she wants to file a complaint. She calls your office. What do your staff do, and what's kind of the process?
So we have at LLR, it's the Office of Investigations and Enforcement, and there's an online complaint portal. That's usually the easiest and best way to submit a complaint. But once a complaint is submitted, as I said, it goes to a review within the Office of Investigation and Enforcement. If it can be determined that there is jurisdiction, an investigator is assigned. Now the investigator can only go through the facts. So they'll do a full investigation. A lot of times they go on site, they pull records, they talk to witnesses, get actual documents. Once all of the case has been investigated, it's actually presented to an investigative review conference. This is within LLR, and that's made up of the investigators, our disciplinary attorney, myself, and experts in the industry, licensees. And so they look at all of the facts of the case and determine, is there actually proof enough present to show that there has been a violation? If there is, they recommend it for what's called a formal complaint. That is, formal complaints usually end up going to the commission either in the form of a consent agreement or a hearing. If when we look at the case or look at the facts of the case, we determine that either one, and this has happened, that the complaint is completely not based in fact, that it was somebody trying to out someone and there actually is no factual basis for the complaint, that's when the IRC, as we call it, will recommend a dismissal. We may actually also do an investigation and the facts of the case do determine that the licensee did everything exactly as they should have. It's just somebody who's unhappy with the outcome. With those facts, at that point, we will also recommend a dismissal. But basically, the investigative conference is just looking at, is there enough facts? Is there enough to prove whether or not a violation has been made? But ultimately, all of those are just recommendations, whether dismissed or formal complaints submitted to the commission, and ultimately they approve it. And as I stated, formal complaints go on to hearing types where the dismissals will send notification, and that's the end of that.
And so our attorney, Austin Smallwood, kind of monitors that. So when you talk about hearing, it's almost like a courtroom, right? There's a
Yes.
prosecuting attorney and witnesses and experts, right?
Yes.
Are those hearings open to the public or are they closed?
They are. They're very much open to the public. We actually the commission has encouraged brokers and brokers in charge to come to these hearings, bring their associate licensees so that they experience and understand what will happen if you do end up violating the statutes. They also we always live stream all of our commission meetings. So even if you can't travel to Columbia, you still can watch these disciplinary hearings. Highly, highly recommend just at least to understand what happens. And we do hold, just because of the volume, we hold disciplinary hearings every other month. Just yesterday we held in May, we'll have another disciplinary hearing actually in June and then in July. So it's very full calendar year.
And typically, like most folks, they're not stealing trust funds. They're doing something maybe innocently or intentionally. What's some of the outcomes if I take a consent agreement or I'm found in violation? What does the Real Estate Commission typically assign for a violation?
Right. With consent agreements, it's usually obviously a public reprimand, which means there will be an order that does get posted on the website. It also does get sent to Arillo, who kind of is a gatekeeper for those commission orders. Typically, it involves some sort of fine. I've seen everything from $500 to yesterday's. There was quite a hefty fine, and I believe that was a closed hearing, so I'll have to wait till the commission order comes out. But they can go up to $5,000 per violation, put it that way. So, and then oftentimes, a lot of the orders, the commission really wants to ensure that the licensee comes into compliance. They want the education piece. They don't want to see the licensee back. So they will add in continuing education in hopes that the licensee will get the education needed and so that they will not do this in the future. But those are kind of the basic parameters of what you're going to see with an order.
And then like Tiara was talking about, we kind of did the Realtor Court for Ethics. And you probably the same thing. If somebody's reticent about filing or they want to file anonymously, what do you say to those callers?
You are welcome to with the online complaint portal. It will ask you for your information and you can't click past it. If you want to do anonymous, you would just type in anonymous or John Doe. The only thing with that is what's really crucial and what really helps is when these investigators do these cases, if on the initial complaint, if they need just a little bit more information and you submit it anonymously, they can only go by those small facts that were presented. So it kind of truncates the investigator's ability to really get to the bottom of things sometimes. So
that makes sense. Tiara, you got a question for us?
Yeah, so we learned a lot about the investigators who are involved at the hearing process. So for the inspectors, what is the process by which a brokerage can be inspected? Is this something that's random? Can you request someone to come in and inspect to make sure that you're in compliance? Or would it do you guys have any process for who's selected to be inspected?
Yeah. Great question. It's right now it's randomized. So each month the inspections teams gets a list and they go out and do inspections. They typically will contact the offices, let them know that they're coming. There is an inspection form. I believe they send that out so that the offices kind of know, what they'll be looking at. I don't know that we've ever had anybody request an inspection, but I'm sure they'd be happy to accommodate. But it is a randomized process, and like I said, they're just looking to see, records as everything in order. And if for whatever reason a firm or property management office fails the inspection, they will actually allow the office or firm to kind of correct it and then come back and do a re-inspection. At that point, if once a second fail happens or they no longer cooperate with our inspections team, at that point the inspections team would turn over their information to our investigative team, and we would proceed with disciplinary action from there.
Thank you. And when it comes to documents and keeping your records, is there a set time where you have to keep these documents? Is it like a set number, or is it just every case is different?
So the document requirements as far as contracts, what should be in them, how long you need to keep them, that's all outlined in statute. So that is the basis for what our inspections team is looking at. Anything beyond that, we wouldn't have the jurisdiction, but what is written down in statute is what they're basing that off of. And I apologize, I don't know the time frame off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then a thing, I'm sure you get lots of calls, we get lots of calls, everybody's worried about kind of broker supervision. What do you say to folks when you're speaking about brokers? What does the Real Estate Commission say to you when they're talking about broker supervision?
So broker supervision, right now it's a national issue that's being discussed by all the commissions because nobody has a really good definition of what supervision is. Kind of the rule of thumb, if somebody lines up all of your agents plus some additional and you cannot pick out from that line of who your agents are, most likely you're not meeting the requirements for supervision. So that's kind of a rule of thumb. It's not the official commission statement, but that's been one that we've kind of utilized. And I think Austin talked about using Austin Smallwood from your office, talked about using driver's license. If you can't pick out their picture, then you're probably not doing your job as far as supervision goes.
Yeah, that's a risk too, right? Because the broker in charge, if somebody does something that violates license law, the supervising broker, they could also be on that complaint, right?
Yes, and the big one, especially with renewals and people getting lapsed as of July 1, if brokers in charge are not paying attention to their associate licensees and those associate licensees lapse and continue to practice, that broker in charge could be liable for allowing that to occur and be held, disciplinary action by the commission.
That's a good thing for the brokers to know. So say early July, as soon as you're back in the office, they could go on there and check each of their associated licensees or have their staff do it to check. That's a great suggestion.
And one of the things, because that change with licenses going lapsed in July, I've actually been doing a series of communications to brokers in charge, to property managers in charge, letting them know this is a change. You need to be aware of your licensees. Here's how to find out who your licensees are, who are registered with the commission, and that you can be held liable if you allow them to continue to practice.
Thanks. And then something we hear calls, Tara, and Nick Cremitis gets plenty of calls as CEO, and Austin and me. What are you hearing from the Real Estate Commission about, I know you said you had some task force on wholesale and flipping issue. What's going on with that?
Wholesaling and flipping, very big issue, not only here in South Carolina, but on the national level. And we do have a wholesaling task force. They are currently working on a position statement. It's not finalized yet. But in the coming, hopefully either June or July meeting, hopefully we will have that wholesaling position statement being taken before the commission. Licensees who are interested in any of this, they are always welcome to attend all these task force meetings. We usually do them via WebEx, and so anybody can listen in, join in, that type thing. But definitely when we bring it before the commission, I would highly encourage licensees to check into that meeting and really listen, because I don't have an official statement for wholesaling, but we are working on it. So.
Yeah, and on the hotline, what I tell people is if you've never done a wholesaler flip, read as much as you can, as fast as you can, maybe refer to somebody that does have experience, get the attorneys, because you're going to need a closing attorney involved anyway. Go ahead and get an attorney that knows how to close a wholesale or a flip transaction, get them involved. So there's some things. What do you say on the hotline when people call about wholesaling or flipping, Tiara? Anything, any words of wisdom?
Yeah, one of the things that I would see is someone basically advertising without a listing agreement. And sometimes it's people who don't necessarily have a license, or sometimes they do have a license. So do you have any advice on advertising that property without the listing agreement?
That is a big, big no-no. By statute, you cannot list if you do not hold that agreement. Now, that does not apply if you own the property. You may, and you're selling by owner, that's a whole different ballgame. But if you are an individual listing another property that you do not have ownership in, you have to have a license, and you have to have that listing agreement with that owner of the property.
What if you're not listing it on the MLS, but you're just posting on Facebook and other websites?
Same thing. It's if you're listing it, period. And we've had numerous cases and complaints submitted where people are advertising on Facebook. They're advertising in private chat rooms, but somebody was there, they knew it, and they reported it to the commission. That is all advertising that the commission takes very seriously.
And what about if it's not a wholesaling situation, but what if I'm an agent and I'm advertising another agent's listing that is not under my same brokerage? Would those same rules apply, or would I be allowed to, repost that on my Facebook or TikTok or something like that?
So that actually is a discussion that the commission is going to be talking about in June, because that's becoming more of a question, and so the commission is wanting to discuss it, provide clarification. So definitely, I would recommend tuning in June, because they will be talking about just that.
And will this hearing be streamed on your YouTube channel?
Yes. All commission meetings are always live streamed on the YouTube.
Okay, thank you.
Super, and this is one you helped me with on the hotline. So say I have a salesperson's license and I want to get into property management. What would you say to me if I called you up and said, do I need a property management license, or is my broker, can I work property management through my broker in charge?
So a broker in charge can actually do property management. So if you're working under a broker in charge and that property management is being done under that broker in charge through that brokerage, you don't have to hold a property management license. Now, you can also, by statute, you cannot hold two different licenses. It's a matter of agency. So that would just, check with that broker in charge, and if that's what they're doing in property management, then you as an associate licensee for that broker can engage in that.
Super.
So if you are not, say your broker doesn't really want to get into that, but you want to do it as a side thing, maybe you are managing someone's Airbnb property or something like that, could you do that on the side while still holding your real estate license under another broker?
No, because that would be a violation. That would be working under two different brokerages, agencies, which would be prohibited by statute.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Yeah. I think this is going to really provide, knowledge and resources.
Yeah.
And speaking of moonlighting and side hustles, some things I get on the hotline. I'm licensed under one broker in charge, and then I want to go work an open house for another brokerage on this weekend, or I'm doing some showings for some agents from another, or I might even try to be a closing coordinator for another brokerage. Is that allowed in South Carolina?
Once again, the statutes require you work for just that brokerage. As far as what you talked about with advertising another person's brokerage, the commission will be talking about that, because the moonlighting, it is becoming a growing concern. So I'll defer that to the commission's discussions in June.
And here's kind of an easy one, and everybody's happy about this one. Can you talk about nicknames and alternative first names? That was an excellent solution to help the licensees kind of talk about that.
So there's nicknames. There's a whole FAQ on the Real Estate Commission. Recommend going there. It's in our little alert section, so it's right there at the top of the section. And then we even have a alternative name registration. When you go onto the webpage, there is a quick link section on the right-hand side, and it's right there under that. So looking at those FAQs, really going through that, making sure you understand the ins and outs, and then we do have that real quick, easy register alternate name on that, located on the website.
Super. And then say somebody's getting married or divorced, and their last name's changing. What do you tell those callers? What do they have to do to get their license
updated? So we do have that happen quite a lot, whether it's marriage, divorce, anything like that. we need the official document showing the name change, so the certificate of marriage or certificate of divorce. Send that in with the email that in to the commission office is always the quickest way to do it. We also have, once again, the licensee portal that I'm building out. We you have the ability to log in and submit legal documents through there. If you're not, if you're really scared about doing something over email, you can always go to the document submission, submit that. Once we get that, we'll be happy to update and reissue the license if it's active. If it's inactive, we'll update, but we don't mail out inactive licenses. So.
Super. And we're kind of at the halftime. This is kind of the halftime show, so we do it. Is it legal?
Yes.
So, Terry, you want to ask the first one, and
Yes.
what we'll do is Meredith will answer. This is our Is It Legal game. We do this. You've probably seen our videos. We'll do it. So it's kind of like a game show.
All right.
All right. We're back with another episode of Is It Legal? Okay, is it legal? If your broker in charge loses their license, can you continue to practice?
No, do not. If a broker in charge loses their license, you will be inactivated. So do not continue to practice, no.
Thank you.
And then the second and last one for Is It Legal? Can you be paid by other than your for real estate practice? Can you be paid by another brokerage, or can you just get paid through your broker in charge?
Not unless you want to appear before the commission. Don't do it.
That's correct. One thing, we've been getting a lot of calls on the hotline about licensees have to submit all offers to the sellers, right? And then, so one thing that I'd say the listing agents, when we go around, we say, as a listing agent, you should always send something back to the buyer agent, either an acceptance, which is great, we got the deal going, or maybe a counter offer, or the LLR has a rejection form.
Right.
Do you get many calls on this form, or is this more like what we get on the hotline, you think?
We don't get very many of those, actually. We get more about the disclosure since it's being updated, but not too many about those. But yes, we have a full page of resources that has all those listed out that any licensee has access to.
Super.
So you mentioned the property disclosure,
Yes.
which is being updated on June 1st.
Yeah.
What are some of the major changes of that property disclosure, and what do our members really need to know about?
Gotcha. Well, one of the big ones is the commission was seeing kind of an abuse against this the
This is the new one,
non-disclosure.
if that helps you reference.
No
it.
representation. I couldn't remember the thing. So they've seen a little bit of abuse with owners putting no representation as kind of a get out of jail free card when they don't really want to answer the question. So the commission has actually updated and kind of expanded that shouldn't be put in there unless there really is, you don't have any data. If the owners are trying to hide something and you as the licensee are aware of it, like that's going to come on you for allowing them to falsify the documents, basically. So that is one big thing that they really wanted to kind of put in there, or enhance. I shouldn't say put in there. Another thing is we had a couple of different groups come to us about issues with flooding and coastal concerns. And so we were the commission heard their concerns and wanted to incorporate. There's a couple questions that we have enhanced information about disclosing flooding damages, anything with property, flooding insurance. I'm trying to think what else, the other ones.
Yeah, like designations or claims. 'Cause
Yeah.
I tell people on the hotline, anything with water, anything with HVAC, anything with mold or other hazmats, like make sure they don't. Because I think sellers usually think no representation. They could basically plead the fifth, and we always
Right.
told them that was a no-no.
No.
And so,
Yeah.
I call them big ticket items
Yeah.
because the more expensive to fix, that's when they're going to hire a trial lawyer and sue everybody. So we appreciate the expansion of the
Yeah.
flood insurance issues.
Yeah. And then the other piece that they wanted to add in there is that we're seeing a rise in this first right of refusal. So that also got incorporated in there because agents were seeing more and more of that kind of pop up. So those were kind of the big changes. Other ones were just kind of cleaning up and clarifications. But the flooding was the biggest kind of chunk that was updated.
And then when will that change over? What's the changeover date from the old seller disclosure to the new one?
So the new form goes into effect June 1st. So if you have a contract on and it's already you use the old form for it, you don't have to redo for the new form, but any kind of contract that you enter in after June 1st, you use this new form.
So what would happen if someone just says, I don't like this new form, I'm going to continue to use the old form? Sometimes we update our forms and people don't like the updated version,
right.
but our rules are you have to use the updated version because that's the most accurate, that's up to date, that's what we're going to prosecute any ethics claims by, that's what it will go by, especially, you know, once you have that knowledge, and it's been quite some time you guys have been promoting this. So in this situation, what if a person just said, I don't like this form, I want to use the old one? Do they have any power to do that?
No, it'd be the same answer that you give them. It's you need to use the updated form as of June 1. It's really not an option.
And one thing I like about it, it went to another page, so things are a little bit bigger and use boxes, so it's a little bit easier to see the lines. And you expand it, you know, the roof system arguably include the gutters, but now you ask about gutters. I thought that was a good addition.
Yeah.
Pest, used to talk about organisms, wood destroying, and so it added, like, I guess a possum or something like that. That might not tear the wood up, but would be a pest infestation.
Right.
One thing we see on the hotline, question 17, ask about easements. You should almost always see a yes there because of utility easements.
Right.
And then, like you said, on page 4 of 6, a lot of questions expanding the flood, which is great. It asks about flood insurance claims with FEMA.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great expansion. And that was recognized kind of nationally at our realtor meetings. They kind of recognized that South Carolina, and I think at Arello too, said South Carolina's at the forefront of expanding those flood things. So that's good to always be mentioned in a positive way.
Yes.
One thing we get a lot of calls on, it looks like they've expanded, is leases, rentals, management agreements, vacation rentals. So do you get many calls about leasing and vacation rentals, or is that something we get calls on more?
No, we get calls about that, but definitely the disclosing any type of leasing agreements that are already existing, that is one that kept continuing to kind of pop up and be issues. So that was another thing that was added onto that to really kind of draw into, you have to, if there's 90 days, you have to honor that. And I believe there's actually a bill on the floor to expand that to 180 days. That's currently in legislation.
And one thing we like to remind people, if they check a yes, they have to explain it either in this blank area or attach some documents. And then one thing that was great when the Real Estate Commission added this Property Owners Association, Homeowners Association. This is an excellent addendum, and it asks, you know, questions about charges, special assessments. So that's a very important form that realtors need to make sure that they get done.
And we get calls about HOAs all the time, and so that is one. Please fill that part out if there is an HOA.
And are you required to fill out that form in all real estate transactions?
In ones involving residential property, yes.
So if it's a land, you know, a vacant land, I wouldn't necessarily have to fill out the property disclosure statement.
Correct. And there is actually on the website, on that forms page, we have a PDF that has the exemptions for those property disclosure forms. So definitely, if a licensee is kind of on the fence as to whether or not it's required, I would recommend having them review that exemption form just to be certain as to whether or not that is required.
Thank you.
And then one thing we always get calls about, or you do teams. What's some issues with teams that you deal with in your job?
You know, as of recently, it's been quiet on the teams front.
Super.
So I like that part.
Quiet is good.
Yes, yes.
And then some recent hotlines that have come up. Say I'm a broker in charge and I'm interested in hiring somebody, associating somebody, but I want to see who they work. Maybe I want to follow up and see why they left the other brokerage, that kind of thing. What would you suggest? If I'm a broker in charge and I call you and say, hey, Meredith, I'm a broker, I might associate this licensee. Is it possible for me to see where they were at other brokerages before?
So the commission, we don't necessarily track or have a history of where somebody has worked. We list where they're currently registered to ensure that they are properly supervised. But if a broker in charge is really wanting to get kind of a track history, what can be done is they can submit a FOIA request to LLR, and we can be able to, I believe, pull that information.
How many licensees are there in South Carolina?
So I just pulled the numbers, and I believe we just are a little bit over 61,000.
And is that, I know you said something about Arello, which governs a lot of licensed associations. Are we considered small, medium, large in comparison to other states?
So I just had the pleasure of going to the mid-year conference, and I would say we're probably about in the middle, because I heard some that were less than 40,000, and then you had Florida that walked in with over 600,000.
Wow.
So yeah, somewhere in the middle.
Okay. And I had some questions about a person trying to get their license, not quite a licensee yet. If you have a prior criminal conviction, does that just cancel you out from being able to get a real estate license?
That's a great question, one we get a lot. No, that doesn't automatically rule you out. There is, and I'm working on it and hopefully going to have it posted by the end of the month, kind of an explanation of what the process is if you do have a criminal background. What the commission can and can't look at, because there is actually a new law in the books kind of restricting what we can and cannot consider. So that kind of explanation form will be on there. But basically, for a license, you have to do 2 background checks. That is submitted to the commission office. We do review it based on that criteria per law. And if there is any type of questions, anything like that, it will go to the commission for an application hearing. We in the office cannot automatically deny an application based on a criminal history. If we have questions or cannot approve the application, because the commission has kind of given us parameters on things we can approve, if we can't, it's then submitted to the commission, and there's an application hearing, and they make the ultimate determination.
And are those hearings public?
Yes. We hold application hearings basically every other month. 1 month is discipline, the other month is application hearings, and definitely anybody can attend those meetings in person or check them out on the lives on YouTube.
And if you already have your license and then you get into some type of criminal charges or conviction, do you have any duties to report that to the licensing board?
Yes, by statute you're required to report it. I believe it's within 10 days of the charge or conviction. But yes, you are required to report it. And so we go through the same process of kind of review, and if it needs to go to investigations or anything like that, it'll be handled that way. But all licensees are required to report.
Thank you.
And then one thing we do on our podcast, we usually talk about kind of our top 10 hotlines. So this might be, some of these might be of interest to you. So when Austin or Tiara or Nick get calls on the hotline, we track those and we count them. And so these are the top 10 in kind of descending orders of calls we get. So number 10 is MLS and property management issues. And this is all a tie. So MLS issues, property management, which we talked about, and professionalism, which is kind of broker supervision. That's kind of our term for broker supervision. Number 9, earnest money. We talked about that. Number 8, ethics, kind of like what Tiara was talking about, our court system for realtors that violate ethics. And ethics somewhat overlap with license law, but there are some differences.
Right.
And then number 7, which is always important to realtors, compensation issues, because they like to get paid so they can do arbitration or mediation. And that tied with the license law issues. So that was number 7. Number 6, our contract has what they call a due diligence, where they can inspect and make a go or no-go decision. That was number 6. And then the top 5 were advertising. Tiara covered some of those issues with you about advertising, having a listing agreement. Number 4, agency, which kind of goes hand in hand with license law. Number 3 is disclosure. We just talked about the new seller disclosure coming online June 1st. So that's number 3. That's one of the top ones. And that's the way a lot of people get sued, is post-closing, something's wrong with the house, and they'll hire a trial lawyer. And number 2 is forms, because like the Real Estate Commission prints forms for licensees, we have a forms library. And number 1, state law. So, I mean, that's what you deal with every day. And kind of other issues. We have a realtor safety, so we try to teach realtors how to be safe, because they have kind of dangerous job. They go out and meet people sometimes in a vacant house. And what we're seeing are scams. Tiara was talking about, she was in Kershaw. You want to tell about the vacant land sale scam?
Yes, so there has been several scams going on where basically a real estate licensee will be contacted by a seller. I use seller like quotation marks. And will say, I want to sell my property quick. I'm out of state, so I won't be able to, meet you in person or do too many communications, but we can talk on the phone, and I'll, send you all the documents via email. And, the licensee sends them over all the proper documents, the disclosures, the listing agreement, the certain forms that they would need, the brokerage relationships forms. and they return everything and then get going with the process and find a buyer. But what is happening is that seller is not the actual owner of the
Right.
property. They don't have any, equitable interest to sell, and it's actually just a big scam to get that money wired from the law firm to that fake seller without the other seller really being aware of what's happening. And of course, the buyer has now not gotten their home and has spent that money. And so we've been seeing this a lot on the hotline. I just was in Kershaw today, and an attorney was able to actually stop this from happening because he actually knew the seller. So that was great. But the bad news is that oftentimes the people don't really get prosecuted because they're, either outside of the jurisdiction of the state or even of the country, or it's hard to kind of track this. So that's definitely been scams has been going on. And that is something that can target our real estate community, but also the vulnerable members of the public as well, that aren't, we're trying to put this out and it's still happening to people, but if you're not in real estate, not in the day-to-day, it can be even easier for these type of scams to happen to you. So have you been seeing anything about that, or any advice that you can give for people to avoid scams?
I actually just had an email from somebody who owned the land and found out that somebody was trying to do that scam on their land. So yes, we have seen it. There's actually an alert that we posted on the commission website about it. But basically the go-to, because this is on the rise, not only here in this state, but in North Carolina and definitely in Florida as well, is to actually report that to the FBI, because they are aware and they're really trying to crack down and get these individuals, who are jumping across different state lines and preying upon the public in this way. So we do have a link on there to the FBI to report it. For licensees who get approached by these individuals, one of the biggest things and best ways to guard themselves is go pull the deed. Make sure who you're communicating with is actually what is on the registered deed. That's one of the easiest ways to safeguard yourself about that. Also on that alert is a couple different tips for licensees, but that being the biggest one. Go pull the deed and make sure that everything that you've just gotten in that rush matches with that deed. So.
Yes, and we would say if it sounds too good to be true and they're trying to move too fast and paying cash and all of these things, then you may need to take a step back and really see what's going on, because sometimes they have similar characteristics, such as they're an out-of-state person, they want to close fast, cash, and they can't do any type of communication. So when you're hearing these type of facts and circumstances, you may want to take a pause and really see, what's going on with it.
Definitely.
And I think we're coming to the close. We have a few more questions. We'll let you have the last word. So a broker in charge, if one of my associated licensees get disciplined, how do you guys communicate with the broker in charge when a licensee is being investigated or being prosecuted?
So by law, we do not alert the broker in charge when an investigation is occurring, because just like I mentioned a little bit earlier, sometimes people can unfortunately be vindictive and submit a false complaint, a false case. And so by law, the investigations are actually confidential, and so we do not release that to the broker in charge. However, if it goes to discipline, that is when the broker in charge is notified. And the commission highly encourages, if you are a broker in charge and you find out a licensee is coming for a disciplinary hearing, come with your licensee. That speaks volumes about you as the broker in charge. It really helps the commission understand the situation, understand the licensee, understand you as the broker in charge. So, but that's when, by law, we can't notify any earlier than the disciplinary action piece.
Yeah, and some things I say on the hotline to the brokers that call, when we talk about, you being this confidentiality, I tell the brokers, look, because brokers want to help their agent. You can always tell the agents, hey, you need to come to me when you have a problem, because we can get in touch with our broker attorney, we can get in touch with our E&O insurance, we can get you a lawyer that will help. So even though you're somewhat boxed in, the broker has some more ways to help their associated licensees.
And we've seen brokers in charge put kind of a policy in their office manuals to do just that. If you are under investigation, let me know, and that way you can get the resources. But as the commission, we can't do
definitely.
that.
And then if I'm a broker and I want to quote unquote fire one of my licensees, I don't they're not producing enough income, they're not documenting their files right, and I want to let somebody go. What's my process when if I called you and said, hey, Meredith, how do I go about this?
The broker in charge can either call. What usually is the best way is to email in to the commission office. We've got multiple team members who check that email so that you have multiple people working on it. So we try and process through as quickly as we can. But just as simple as the person's name, the license number, and that they are no longer affiliated with the firm. And then we can take care of that and inactivate. My goal with building out some of the resources is to actually, just like the licensee portal for the individual members, I'm really wanting to build out a portal for the actual firms so that the broker in charge has access to the firm's portal and can actually go in and see who the licensees are that are associated with that brokerage. They can print off their license, they can check the status, and they can even request that this person be removed, all in that portal. So that's something I'm hoping to build within the next year. So.
You gave us some very valuable advice today, and I hope this helps our members get a better understanding of the difference between SCR and LLR, as well as the renewals that are about to come up, and to help lessen those phone calls that you guys are about to be getting. And now they know that no fingerprints are required, so I feel that will make the process a bit smoother this year. So yeah, just thank you for your time. Do you have anything else?
Yes, I got 4 speed ones. So if I'm
All right.
associated licensee, and these are all hotlines of why I'm asking you, because
Sure.
I can say, hey, here's a video you can go watch where you can hear
Perfect.
it straight from the real estate commissioner or administrator's mouth. So if I'm an associated licensee, I want to change brokerage, I call you up and say, hey, I need to change. What do you tell those folks?
That actually is super easy. You don't even need to call the commission office. You can actually go online to the commission website, and once again in that quick link section, there it says online office transfer. Click on that, you put in the information, and then the brokerage is notified of the transfer. So it's super easy, and once again, just heading to the licensee portal will actually make it quicker than calling us.
Unlicensed work. So somebody, say they're from North Carolina, they don't have a South Carolina license, and I think you said you had an issue with the commissioner. So talking about unlicensed work, what are some things to?
No, you have to have a South Carolina license here. Even if you're licensed in another jurisdiction, you have to have a license here.
Super. And then Tiara was talking about education. You got to have 10 hours. That's what, 4 core. If you're a broker, you got a 4-hour broker, and then brokers, because realtors got to do their 2.5 hours every 3 years. They could perhaps double dip on that one. And then the last one comes up, education waiver. So if I've been in license for 25 years, I probably need to keep taking CE, but if I want to apply for the education waiver, what's the process at your office?
Once again, it's under the Manage My License piece. We can also go onto the continuing education page, and we have the explanation for those exemptions and then the form. And it's a real simple form. You fill it out, you email it in, or submit it via the licensee portal with the education documents, and we'll process. And if you're approved, we always send a notification confirming it. As to whether it's a partial or a full. If you get the communication that nope, you're not allowed, then we always make sure that certain that but I haven't seen anybody be rejected yet. Normally they're spot on. So
Super. And then Tiara said thanks, and then we always promote the realtor tag, so you can buy this at the MV and promote. Tiara handles the grants. Tiara, you want to give them a
Yes.
talk about the tag?
So each purchase of this homeownership, the American Dream license decal or license plate tag goes towards a fund that we manage, and that fund, once we collect all of the money from the funds, we allow habitats all over the state to apply for grant funding, and then we basically divvy out the amount that we raised from the purchase of the license plate to go to different habitats to help them do things like build homes for families and veterans and help give back. And sometimes we are involved locally. We'll go to help with those actual bills, but we also, of course, give those grant funds every year, and it's coming up around that time. So we encourage you to purchase this because that money is going to those in need that Habitat are helping. So yeah, I need to get me one.
Definitely.
So yeah.
Thanks for Mike producing as always. Meredith, we appreciate you coming in, and you appreciate your time, and we're excited about 2023 and 2024. Sounds like a lot of good things are happening for licensees, which means realtor members as well. Thank you.
thank you.